So the British government have decided to start an inquiry on the grooming gang scandal. Now it's important to remember that just a couple months ago they overwhelmingly voted to not do this. So before we get all the answers, I want to tell you that you probably shouldn't trust them, or you probably shouldn't take 100% of what it says and the conclusions in the data, because they're not doing this out of interest for the truth. They want to suppress our appetite for answers, because as the British public, we keep crying on about the systemic rape of British girls. We're just whinging and being annoying, and they want to stop us from talking about it, so they're finally caving into the pressure, and they're going to do a little inquiry. But they're not looking for the truth here, because, the truth doesn't help them, so they're not looking for the truth here. They're looking simply to give us answers for the sake of giving us answers. I'm going to start with a video from LBC.
The whole of the country needs to know that there's gangs of Pakistani men going around targeting young, white, helpless English girls and getting them on drugs and pimping them out to their friends and family and raping them 10 a day, 20 a day.
Listen, John.
Scout clubs and all this stuff. In fact, we know that goes on.
Yeah.
But this is the biggest scandal ever this country has ever known.
But
and if we don't have inquiry, we won't all know.
Do you accept that it isn't just Pakistani men?
In the grooming gangs, it basically is.
No, it isn't. It isn't. Then you, John, haven't been watching the news closely enough.
I have been watching the news. The grooming gangs.
They're not all Pakistani. Plenty of them are white, and plenty of them are women on and off. You see women in the group as well.
It's 90% Pakistani men.
Listen, John, nobody is denying that there are grooming gangs in all.
It isn't.
I'm not suggesting it isn't.
It's not all. It's not all, but it's 90 to 95%.
No, it isn't 90 to 95%. It isn't, John. And also, John.
Gangs are.
Also,
the grooming gangs. What they're doing, the drugs, getting them involved in drugs and pimping them out, they are done by Pakistani grooming gangs.
Not only. Not only.
Oh, come on. You know what?
That's all I'm saying.
You can't keep whitewashing this subject.
I'm not whitewashing anything, John. The other thing you've got wrong, John, the other thing you've got wrong, is to suggest that this has been happening for 20-odd years only. This has happened
for 20, 30 years.
It's happened and 10 years before that, and 10 years before that, and 10 years before that, and 10 years before that. There have always been, John, there have always been predatory men individually and together who...
This is a new thing. This is a new thing. This grooming gang thing, this is a new thing.
It's really not a new thing.
I find this genuinely disgusting. They still do this. The left wing still does this. Problems used to exist, so we should import more problems. I almost didn't even want to say it because it's such a cliche right-wing talking point. Well, there was rape before. Why should we import more? Of course, the answer is we shouldn't. Why? And also, it is true, it is not 90 to 95% as the caller suggests. But see, if I were on an interview or a podcast or a call with somebody and they made such a claim, I wouldn't even bother debunking them. I really don't care whether it's 50%, 60% or 90%. I feel no duty or obligation to stand up for migrants. Oh, I better defend them, I better get on my knees right now and make sure that their feelings aren't hurt by this false statistic. I actually don't care if it's false. I don't care if it's exaggerated. I can go and show you the real statistics right now. 62%. I don't know if this one shows anything different. But yeah, I think this was recently created, but even older data, there was one that showed it was about 80%. This one says 62%. I'm going to go by this one because the higher the percentage from a study, the higher the chances is of it being a criminal offence to highlight it. So I'm going to show this one. 4% of the population, 4%. Pakistanis made up 62% of grooming gang suspects, with British in second place at 22%. 462. People in America go on about black crime statistics. They talk about 1350. 1350. Have you ever considered 462? That is vile. That is an imported problem. And this guy I know, he says 1 in 16 Pakistani men. And that's going to bring up an important point here. For the globalist or the universal utilitarians. I want to talk about this from the perspective of a doctor. If a patient comes in and he's, say, 420 pounds, or like 30 stone. And he also, whilst he's in the hospital, you then realise that he's got cancer in his leg. What one do you treat first? Do you try and do this 20-year diet plan to slowly get him to lose weight and go back to a healthy weight? Or do you go, oh, tumour, cancer, he's going to die in a month. Better get rid of that now. Better focus on that one before we start talking about diet plans. Oh, we're going to hook him up on the 2-500 diet or something like that. No, you're going to remove the tumour. You're going to get the surgery done. Now, for the globalist utilitarians, they would see this statistic. 1 in 16 Pakistani men. And they would think, no. We got to be empathetic. We got to think about the 15 and 16 who haven't done anything. Because these girls, they don't matter. Because what we would be doing is sending 90% or 95% of these individuals to a country that is worse than ours, and they have a human right to be here. It doesn't matter what crime they commit. If we have to sacrifice 10,000 British girls to the slaughter to help improve the quality of life for 1 million Pakistani men, then that is a noble act. However, we live in a world of national governments. If it was a one-world government with no borders, perhaps you could use that argument. However, quality of life is subjective, and to them, actually it'd be totally normal for them, it wouldn't be so bad. But let's say it wasn't. If we had an open borders, well, no borders, and no national government, you could make the claim. However, we have a national government. We have a border. We have elected representatives who exist and who are elected on the basis that they put British people first. By them trying to put the interests of, oh, we'll let people immigrate from Africa because their country sucks, so they should all come here so they can be happier. It's silly because they have governments who represent them. We have governments that, well, a government that represents us. They have no obligation past representing us. They don't need to give money to other countries, foreign aid. They don't have to owe people access into our country to help them build a family. That's not stuff that should be interesting to them, yet they find it very fascinating. So I see this statistic, or I hear 1 in 16, I see 462, and I'm not sitting here thinking, how can I stick up, how can I be the white hero, how can I be the saviour, one of the good white guys who stands up against his own people and fights for the global majority and the historically oppressed. I don't think that. I hear this statistic and I think 1 in 16, all 16 gotta go. I mean, that's my interest. What I care about is the safety of British people. I don't care if some people. It'd be different if we were sentencing them to death. I would obviously have the moral consciousness to say, okay, let's not do that. There's innocent men there. But if I hear this statistic and we basically say you could save tens of thousands of British girls if you remove all of them, right? But actually like 92-93% of them are innocent. I'm going to say, you know what? It's not like they're getting thrown into hot boiling water, tortured and killed. They're getting removed. They're getting sent to their country of origin. It's really not that bad. It's not an active war zone. There's not mass starvation going on. They'll be fine. Most of them have family there, and obviously if it was all of them, then they'd have family here. They'd be going back to their family. Safe routes. You know, they talk about safe routes. The Green Party are always talking about safe routes for immigration. Safe routes. We can give them safe routes back. You know, we're not going to crash the plane and start doing ridiculous things. We're just saying we're remigrating them. We're taking them from one place to another. No blood will be spilled. No people will die. We're just changing which country that they hold residence in. And that will save lives. I also want to show you this statistic here. We got sexual offences per 10,000. We got a little table aside. Now, unless the British government have been possessed into thinking that their responsibility, their moral duty is to serve the people from other countries, all from the other end of the world, then there would be no reason, if their interest is British people, forget even indigenous British people, we could even take the more moderate angle and say everyone who's a citizen I don't stand for that. But that would be very, very moderate, very popular, even with migrants, by the way. It wouldn't even be controversial to simply sit and say, the people from these 15 countries, nope, not allowed. Sorry. It just can't happen. We cannot allow it. It's dangerous, so we're saying no. We're not importing problems into our country. Would you hire a Chinese citizen into MI6? No, it'd be stupid. The same way you don't hire people who rank at first place on this list into your country. We are the gatekeepers to citizenship. We don't owe them something. They have to offer us something. And this is what we're being offered. I say no. Is it not okay to say no now? We have to be so open-minded. We say yes to everything. Yes, more of everything. We'll get Afghani restaurants opening up. I don't care, right? And then we have another little way of putting it where it compares British people, real British people, right there, all the way down here. Violent offences. You could stop today by closing the border to, I call for all immigration to be stopped today, right? That's what I call for. But you could take this really simple position. Say you're a left-winger, you want to become a bit more popular. You could take the stance that no one from Congo is allowed into the country anymore. And then you know what you could do? You could stop by making that policy decision. You could stop an elderly lady from being randomly assaulted on the way home from the shop. You would prevent that from happening. You would prevent... There was this thing of an old man who recently I think he was killed in his home. They broke through his window, they jumped in and they set the place on fire or something, and he died in his house, all alone. You could stop that from happening. Or you can be empathetic, and you can be such a good moral person and allow that to happen, and give the Congolese a quality of life boost. And then we have this horrible woman as well. MPs guilty of assaulting their partners, and Farage hanging out with Andrew Tate. This is, I don't know who she is, but
there's something
Politics Joe.
really insidious about how they are taking credit for forcing the government's hand in this inquiry and claiming to be the champion of women and girls when one of their MPs has been convicted for assaulting his partner, when Nigel Farage has previously associated with Andrew Tate, who had credible allegations against him and now has been charged for the exact same behaviours that we see being pointed out in Baroness Casey's report, such as the lover boy tactics of grooming women. It's just beyond belief that they're trying to claim that they are the champion of women and girls when their record very much shows that they are not.
So there is a systemic rape of young British women and girls. And this person's went on Politics Joe not to sit here and campaign against this. Hey, look at who's doing that crime. They must go. It's the only way to stop this problem. They have to go. No. She sits there to get a little cheap punch at Nigel Farage, whom I don't support. Because Farage isn't allowed to speak up against these things. Reform supporters aren't allowed to say that they're against all these things. Because, well, one of the Reform MPs was guilty of committing a crime against his girlfriend when he was 17 years old, of which he served time in prison for, and now is a married man with children who clearly isn't the same man as he once was. And then also, Nigel Farage took a picture. He took a picture with Andrew Tate. Not a picture, for heaven's sake. And therefore, there's no way they could be good people. There's no way that they could care about such horrific things happening within this country. Because he took a picture with a bad man. The logic behind this is insane. Of course, you can criticise those things from Reform. You can criticise them all you'd like. The fact that this report, these statistics, are coming out, and your first thought is, I'm going to go in an interview with Politics Joe and start trying to get cheap political shots saying, well, he took a picture. You're not going to talk about the tens of thousands of individuals that are having some of the most heinous crimes inflicted upon them. You're not going to talk about that. You're going to sit here and talk about pictures, photographs, and 20-year-old crimes. It's disgusting. And this is and I hate when it's a young woman like this herself who is talking about it, because guess what? She could be the victim. It could be one of her friends. I'm not saying it should be. I'm actually arguing for the complete opposite. But I'll say one thing about feminism, and that all of a sudden means that I surely couldn't be opposing any of that. I'm just a disingenuous racist. Oh, of course you got me there. You got me there. No. It's disgusting stuff, honestly. And I don't know how anyone could have any other opinion. Not to,